right. Well, good morning, Todd.
Good morning. Good morning. I don't know what I'm singing right now. It's so low.
That was, it was very low.
It's fine. You know what?
That's the story of our lives right now.
Exactly. Everything is off key. Whoa, yeah.
Oh, no, don't worry. I could try and make you sound better no matter what.
Well, I appreciate it. The chords have not woken up this morning. But
yes,
let's
as always.
talk about it. You did the local chapter of Dancing with the Stars for the American Lung Association's Oxygen Ball. And guess what, everybody? Laura won! Yay! The whole evening raised, I believe, $212,000 for the American Lung Association. Laura killed it on the dance floor. I was there. I got to be there. I got to see it in person. She did a routine to Katy Perry's, what's the name of the song? Dark Horse. It was really fun.
Well, because for days you kept singing "Make Me Your Aphrodite" in different.
Make me your Aphrodite.
Oh, and if I got to tell you guys, it was so many different iterations of that it is now. I don't know if the song is ruined or better, but no, it was such a good time because Todd got to come in. We got to actually be around each other in person instead of just over Zoom. And he opened the show, which was amazing. And I mean, it still feels surreal, but ultimately everybody raised, I think 212 was just from without the silent and live auction. So even more than that. And I was able to raise almost $60,000. So
holy crap.
I'm very proud of myself for that, but also very happy for the American Lung Association to have had that much support. And ultimately, I'm just so glad that I didn't just fall over on my face on the dance floor. So, the dance was its own thing, but the raising the money. Well, thanks. I just never want to watch that video ever. But we when it comes out, I'll post it on our social media so everybody can see, and I just won't ever look at it.
Exactly. Well, it was great. You did a great job. And I actually got to stay for a week. My flight got canceled and we were like, kismet. So
yeah. Well, your mom was sick.
My mom was sick with COVID. There was a lot going on, but she's good now. Thank goodness. Shout out to Duchess.
Shout out to Duchess, who is like our biggest fan. And we got to spend a lot of good quality time together. It was awesome.
She said to me the other day, she's like, if you cuss one more time on that program, I will not share this to anyone on my Facebook.
Oh, no.
Like, oh, gosh. Well, shit.
We've recorded We've already recorded some that may have some curse words. Soon start bleeping them.
Exactly. Sorry, Mom. Sorry, Duchess. Yeah, she said, the reason she's called Duchess is because she didn't like the term grandma. So she said, y'all need to call me Duchess.
I like that was her first go-to. It wasn't anything else.
It's hysterical. It's like,
call me queen.
Yeah.
Call me goddess.
She lives on Gammon Street, so it's like Duchess of Gammon.
Think about that. Oh, I love her so much.
Me too. Well, today we've got a very, very amazing guest on the program. Yeah.
Yes, we do. We have an awesome guest, David Goldsmith, David Goldy Goldsmith. He was just more than I guess we could have ever hoped for as far as being so open and honest about a lot of things. One being his relationship with his dad, who everybody probably knows out there is known as the most interesting man from the Dos Equis commercials. So I think we both kind of came away from it with not like a heaviness, but a little bit of like a, wow, that was just so much. And he has overcome so much and done so much. And I just think he's an incredible human. Todd, thank you for introducing him to me and the world.
He is an incredible artist, an actor. He's a hilarious actor. He's a great comedian. Like he says on the program about how he's rooted in improv and, nominated for an Emmy Award at age 15. Like he is the real deal. He's had so many different avenues, and he's just really honest about his childhood and how he grew up in Hollywood. And it was a really,
and all the famous people he was surrounded by.
We're still processing the interview.
We're still very much processing this.
It
was, yeah. And I'm sure it's even more so for you because you're close to him. But for me, it was almost like we both got off and we're like, oh, what's wrong with us? But it's not.
We felt heavy because we could feel the pain that he's had to endure and the trauma recovery he's had to go through. But he has come out on the other side, and he's still working on it. He's still in therapy, and he still knows that working on yourself is important. It's imperative.
Yeah. I mean, and this is what we're here for, is talking about overcoming trauma, and doesn't mean you have to be done. Doesn't mean
Exactly.
you're just fixed.
Exactly.
It's a process
It's
for a
an
lot of us.
ongoing conversation constantly
Yes.
to heal. Can you give our listeners, I think you have a bio.
Of course. Yes, I do. So, David Goldsmith, I will go ahead and introduce this lovely man. In 1971, it was an amazingly good year for Earth. I wonder who wrote this. David Goldsmith drew us his first breath and exhaled the beginning of a unique and interesting life. Born to character actor Jonathan Goldsmith and former model Betty Gilday, David was the product of his environment. This led him to being a young actor, nominated for an Emmy at 15, stand-up comedy, improv, directing commercials, and now working with countless filmmakers, shaping the look of their creative vision through optics. David, now mostly known by his nickname Goldie, shares his experiences of life, love, family, parenthood, and the gouge in his soul left by a lifetime working in entertainment. So without further ado, introducing David Goldy Goldsmith. Well, good morning.
Hello.
Good morning. Goldie.
Hello. How are you this morning?
I am me. That's the best part of the morning. I can tell you that much. There's a lot going on for me today, this being one of those big things. So it's very cool to be here.
We're very happy to have you. Goldie, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, and what initially drew you to the film and television industry?
Well, absolutely. So my name is David Goldsmith, and I was born and raised here in Los Angeles, California. I actually born at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center to a couple of parents that worked in entertainment. My mom was long ago a model and an actress and a TV host. And at some party in a drunken stupor, I guess she met my father, who was an aspiring actor who had done some work on Broadway and character stuff, TV and soap operas and stuff like that. And I guess that passion was uninterruptible and resulted in whom you're talking to now. And born here in LA, raised here in Los Angeles, around the industry. It's kind of something hard. You can't swing a dead cat without hitting something industry related here. Yeah, boom, here I am. That's kind of my entry into it. It wasn't, I didn't come here from Indiana with a dream. I was born into the nightmare.
Oh, so I guess to piggyback off of that, did you see it as kind of a nightmare? Like, what drew you into participating in it once you were, because some people might be like, this is too much. I'm not a fan. I'm not going to do this. So what brought you to it?
Desperation is kind of a unique, I will say this. This is a very anecdotal story, but I guess it's a podcast, so you want those. I've been married now twice. And the first round, I remember, was my wedding day. And my best man came up to me and he said, "You don't seem to be too excited about this." I said, what do you mean? He says, "It's your wedding day. It's the most exciting day of your life." And I remember looking at him square in the eye and I said, "Well, you've never blown up a helicopter." And that's how I got drawn into it. The entertainment industry is a very unique window into experiences and people and scenarios that are just not available in any profession or maybe even in any setting on earth. And so it's incredibly intoxicating. For me, it was never, I got to meet. It was always, I got to do. As a kid with a dad who was always working on a TV show that was recognizable, A-Team, Knots Landing, Dallas, all that stuff, Gunsmoke, Charlie's Angels, etc. I'd visit him on set and the makeup guys would always give me like a scar on my face or, make me look like I burnt my hand and take it home. Mom, I got hurt. It was just always fun. And the people were just intoxicating and the scenarios were cool and car chases and gunfights and all the stuff that you're really supposed to avoid in life was recreated in entertainment. And so it was a really cool access. And that was what drew me in as a kid for sure. There were some repulsive parts of it that are still repulsive today. I'm happy to talk about them, but that was the lure.
Okay. Todd knows you a little bit better than I do, but I have been doing some of my own research and Todd has given me a little bit of some anecdotal stuff as we talked about, which please, as many anecdotes as possible. That's what we're here for. But I have heard that you went to school with quite a few people that ended up being kind of household names at this point. Can you kind of tell us what it's like to see or to be in school with some of these A-list actors and what it's like to see so many of your people that were in your class achieve success?
Yeah, not a problem. I mean, well, it's not, school's sort of a metaphor for during my informative years. I really did cross paths with a tremendous pool of talented, successful people. I'm a graduate of Beverly Hills High. And I am, my alumni were Monica Lewinsky and Right before me was the Menendez brothers, who rose to fame.
Stop.
Yeah, I mean, these are people that we weren't pals, but I certainly went to school and saw them in the halls and that sort of thing.
I'm sorry, I'm freaking out. The Menendez brothers? Are you serious?
It sounds like a boy band, doesn't it? But it's not.
But I don't.
Murderers.
Yeah, they were murders.
I know.
Sorry.
Yeah, and then there was a bunch of kids that sort of roamed the halls, and he was on a soap opera, and it's Beverly Hills High, of course. But more notably, I had worked myself as an actor, and we can talk about that whenever you want. It's not terribly thrilling, but during that time, I was in my youth, and I couldn't attend regular school, so I was in a trailer on the side of a soundstage, being educated. And then when that work sort of dried up, I ended up going to a regular school. That regular school was Beverly Hills High, and I wasn't terribly ready for regular school because I had no routine and no skills, and my education was like, oh, look, you know what Annapolis, go. We need you back on set. Okay, cool. So I was a bit behind. And in that process, there was a couple of sort of therapeutic things for me that I needed to get through those days. One of them was sort of not specialized education, but maybe a little bit more attention than most people. But that also resulted in me getting involved very heavily into some comedy improv classes, which just absolutely changed my life. And it is from those experiences that I met other people: Christina Applegate, Leah Remini, Drew Barrymore, Fred Savage, Joaquin Phoenix, all these people that I sort of came into contact with. In fact, Joaquin Phoenix and Fred Savage were on a TV show that I did as a kid called Morning Star, Evening Star. Have you heard of it?
I have, and I have met Fred Savage before, so I feel like we are connected in that way.
We are. Well, most people have not heard of it.
That's the show you were nominated for an Emmy for at 15, correct?
Yeah, so the studio had sort of, and the publicist had sort of done a blanketed sort of, hey, come look at our cast. It was an amazing show, actually. It was the producers of the Waltons. This is way back, guys, because I'm super old. But they had kind of reassembled and created a show called Morning Star, Evening Star, which was about a state-funded orphanage and a state-funded sort of retirement community. And the orphanage had burnt down, and the orphans had to go move into the attic of the home of the elderly folks. And it was sort of the old and young coming together. And it was an amazing cast: Scatman Crothers, Sylvia Sidney, Kate Reed, Elizabeth Wilson, Mason Adams, tremendous cast. And then we also had the kids. And of those kids were Chris Peters, John Peters' son, myself, Joaquin, who was at that time a younger actor named Leaf Phoenix.
Stop.
Yeah, he was, I believe, born Leaf Phoenix. I'm not sure. If you look up early credits, Fred Savage. It was an amazing experience. But because of the attention that show got critically, many of us got nominated for an Emmy. And I was nominated for an outstanding lead actor in a dramatic series up against John Forsythe and Don Johnson. And it was crazy. And I'll never forget the night of the show. They were announcing nominated for outstanding lead actor in dramatic series. And John Forsythe, and the crowd went wild. Don Johnson, Miami Vice. Crowd went wild. They kept going, George Harrison. And then it was like David Goldsmith. David Goldsmith. And I was like, oh my God, you hear a mouse fart. But it was super cool. And of course, I did not win. I believe Don Johnson won that year.
This is why you always refer to yourself as failed child actor, because you didn't win the Emmy.
Sure. Yes. Thanks for bringing it up.
We try not to, but it happens. Todd can't help himself sometimes.
Sure can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, no, I call myself a failed child actor because I just mentioned some names that probably many of your listeners know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then, of course, here I am, and you're getting to know me.
Yes.
Because of trauma.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a failed child actor, in my opinion. But yeah, no, I look back fondly on my work. I still work. I've had the great fortune of working on a tremendous amount of motion pictures and projects. And then I'm often ushered onto the set in some sort of character role doing something cool. And I still get residual checks, and I'm still a member of the Screen Actors Guild, and I'm still very heavily involved. I am not a successful working actor like those names, for sure.
Well, I'd say that you definitely have I like to call myself, so I'm now back to practicing law, but before, when I wasn't practicing and I decided to open a restaurant instead, I would call myself a recovering lawyer. So I would consider you more of a recovering actor. Because went on to do a lot of other things, as we know. And for everybody out there, we're going to read his bio, but you have done lots of direct assisting and general, producing, all of that. So, I know you're a little self-deprecating, but you don't need to be all the time. We think you're very
okay.
talented.
Very good.
All right, let's cut to the.
I know I got to be the foil to Todd sometimes. So so we know your mom was a playmate / model, and your dad.
If I can interrupt, she was a Playboy bunny at the Playboy Club.
Oh,
yeah, she was not like a spread your legs bunny. She was like, get me a drink, honey. She was sort of like a waitress at the Playboy Club when it was really fashionable and cool to be there. She was a model. She was a print model. Also, because a thing I used to do at shopping malls and Macy's and Neiman Marcus, where they would hire very beautiful younger women with beautiful figures to wear the latest fashion and roam the aisles. And she had done that for many, many years. And she said, that's available in ladies and whatever. And that was her thing. She also was on a show. She was like the Vanna White of the 50s on a show called Queen for Day. And so she was like, you want a new washing machine? And she'd stand there and present it. And she did that. She's on the Jack Parr show. She co-hosted a show with Johnny Carson for a little while. So she was an on-air personality and good-looking lady back in the day, and still is. She's 91 this year, and she is still dating. It's unbelievable.
Oh, that's amazing. That's really awesome. Amazing. Well, and so you had her as a mother. So that was obviously, you have tremendous respect for her. But your dad is also an actor who is most famously known as the most interesting man in the world from the Dos Equis commercials, Mr. Jonathan Goldsmith. Can you tell us a little bit about what it was and is like having two parents in the industry and a little bit more about your relationship with them?
Absolutely. So as I just mentioned about mom, I'll just start there because that's where I came from. She's an amazing human being. She's a narcissist like the rest of all of us in Hollywood, but she's spectacularly a narcissist. You can call her and say, God, I just had the most incredibly painful day at work. this person did that, and I stubbed my toe, and then the stapler went off on my nuts, and I went crazy, and a horrible day. And she goes, well, when I was working, it was the same thing. And what? we just
she had the exact same day.
Or worse. It's always worse or whatever. At this point, it's frustratingly charming. It was a little rougher growing up because she also is a socialite and still is. And oftentimes that took precedence. So if I wanted to go play catch or go do something like a kid would do, she'd say, go, just go. And I would go, and then I would be out there alone. That was a little bit of a unique thing, but it's something I just grew up with. It was very standard. And then you play that off of dad. My dad, to give you an example of who he is as a human being, he was on I believe he was in Night of the Iguana on Broadway. I think he was man number 9 or something like that. He wasn't starring or headlining. And I believe I may screw it up, but I believe that was the show. And Dustin Hoffman and he were both sort of on the same, on par with each other role-wise, and they'd always kind of been a competition. My dad's from New York, and so he's a New York actor, and he kind of had made the rounds in the 50s and 60s trying to make a name for himself and did some soap opera work or whatever. But he's not in the Iguana, whatever. But he got into a little altercation with Mr. Hoffman backstage because they were rivals. And my father took him aside and says, the difference between you and me, Dustin, I'm going to make it and you're not.
Yeah.
Ooh, so
eating those words now, probably
a little bit. But that's just a famous little family story of ours because he sees the irony in that, of course. And he's a relatively focused and aggressive person when it comes to his career, and again, a narcissist on a level that is epic and Olympic, actually. And that translated always into he came first. Always, and as a kid, you process that the best you can. But as an adult, you question it more than process it. And when you become a parent yourself, you just are flabbergasted because you just can't even imagine. And it kind of, for me, it's gotten uglier as I've gotten older and more cognizant of what was supposed to be. So I'm not saying I'm the victim of any sort of abuse that was intentional, but I certainly grew up in a household of two people who had other aspirations than being mom and a dad, and certainly other than being a husband and a wife as well. I think that's probably the crazy part of my life, was that I did not live in a normal house. It wasn't like, I was tied up in a corner, barely being fed and beaten. But in many ways, emotionally, it was absolutely that.
Did your father specifically ever champion you in your career on and off camera? And was he proud when you were nominated for the Emmy, stuff like that?
That's a big question. So how much time do you have? So
we've got all the time in the world for you.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I have my, hold on, let me just tell
I know
you
you're
guys,
busy.
you don't have to start the chopper right now. I'll be done a little later than expected. So just, they're on the tarmac there. Anyway, that's somewhere to be.
Not anymore.
Yeah, no, I told Captain Lips, we're okay. So Todd, to answer your question, when I found comedy improvisation, it really changed my life. It was a place for me to be me. One minute I was acting like a monkey up in a tree. The next minute I was the Sultan of the Sea. I could go anywhere, do anything, be anyone at any given moment. And ultimately, the big one was that I could say anything. Mm-hmm. And for a 14 or 15-year-old kid who, I wasn't squelched at home, but there were certainly standards that were to be kept. It wasn't a mommy dearest thing, but it was a mommy dearest thing. And in a weird way, not a dramatic, horrible way. People wouldn't say, "Oh my God, they're so terrible to his son." It's not that. It's just, my mom sort of was old school, and you dressed every day if you were going to leave the house and that sort of stuff. So when I found improv, I really did spread my wings emotionally. And also creatively, I didn't realize that I had so much locked up inside. So to answer your question, Todd, I had to start there because at that point, my father we had common ground for the first time ever. He understood joy of the sound of applause. He understood the high that you get when something clicks and a scene happens, whether it's scripted or improvised. When a scene works between two actors, there is no more. It's like jazz musicians riffing, man. When you find that groove, it is intoxicating as an artist, but it's intoxicating for the audience as well. And when everyone's intoxicated, it's a party, man. It's awesome. So that was the best part of the beginning of your answer. The best part of it was in the beginnings when I was just learning and I was just spreading my wings. There was a lot of communication and a lot of collaboration and a lot of support for sure. But then something happened and it was unexpected. It was unintentional. What had happened was I started getting successful. I was doing improv at the Laugh Factory on Sunset Boulevard here in Los Angeles. Every Thursday night, we would open up. I was part of a teenage improvisational group called You've Got to Be King, with the idea line. It was all teenagers. Everyone was 18, and you were doing adult-themed improv as kids. It was really fun.
How does that work?
Well, we would ask the audience, which was predominantly adult, where's an interesting place to go on our first date? And, we would act that out, at a base at a laundromat, boom, and you go. So when I say adult base, it's very interactive and most of the audience was adult. So we it wasn't like, you're giving Sally a blowjob on the top of the steeple.
I was going to ask. No, I was like, what is this adult based situation?
No, so but when I say it was it was kids performing for adults. Basically.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So maybe I should have said it differently. But but we opened up for a young, very talented stand-up named Mark Price. He was very famous as playing Skippy, the next door neighbor on Family Ties. This is dating me, but he had a regular gig Thursday nights at the Laugh Factory, and we opened for him regularly. And it became a showcase for a lot of the people in my group. I was approached by an agent named Harry Gold. He was a very famous agent, and his daughter was Missy Gold, and she was on Who's the Boss and other shows, I believe, if I think about that right. And he said, you're very talented. We'd love to represent you. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean? And I talked to my dad. I'll never forget that night. I could just see a shift, that little twinkle in the eye that you get from your parents when they're proud of you. It was extinguished that night. There seemed to be something was wrong. Like, Harry Gold, they want to represent you. It was that sort of a thing. And I went with it. A few weeks later, I landed a role on the new Twilight Zone. I was kid number 2. Ridiculous. I was jumping out of the bushes in a pig mask, scaring one of the town kids in an episode called Shadow Man. But it was directed by Joe Dante, who's a very big film director. And it was a really cool experience. And I did some commercials and ultimately landed a job on this TV show, Morning Star, Evening Star, as a cast member. It was a pilot that we shot that was supposed to go for 12 episodes. We shot 6 and they pulled the plug on us. But that was the beginning of where I kind of am with my dad now. And it's an interesting story in the sense that it's unexpected. You couldn't imagine that this would be the case because unlike many father-son relationships, my father and I unfortunately, are sort of in competition, and we shouldn't be. However, I'm not a competitor in any way. I mean, I'm almost half his age, and I don't know what that's all about, but I can tell you that the beginning of the end for me with my relationship with my dad and possibly even with my career was that this was a time when a young actor, there was no cell phones, there was no internet, no emails, no text. Everyone was beginning pages. So 1982, 83, everyone had a beeper. My father was no different. And, I had endured years and years of my father's agent taking precedent over everything, every family vacation, every phone call. The phone would ring. He would literally push an old lady out of the way to answer it in case it was his agent. It was like those kinds of times. And it was really weird because when you're a working actor and you're underage, you have to have what's called a guardian. Mm-hmm. So basically, you come to work as a kid and you have someone who ever brought you to work generally will stay with you all day and they're your rep. God forbid you get hurt, they take you to the hospital. Whatever it is, they're there kind of as your assistant, but really mostly to look over and be your guardian. And my father was setting me up for failure left and right. And I didn't know it at the time, but I saw it happening and I see it clearly now. Like there was one job I was on a show called The New Gidget. It was a weird time. There's a lot of news. The new Twilight Zone, the new Gidget.
Twilight.
But I was at work and he drove me to reluctantly, why didn't make a call time this early? And I'm like, well, do you complain when you have an early call time? I mean,
yeah.
Exactly. And my parents had just divorced. I was 12. At the time I was 13 years old working on this TV show. And he drove me reluctantly to work and dropped me off and knew one of the grips and paid him $25 and said, hey, give me my kid's guardian. I got an audition today and left. And then the studio teacher came over and said, hey, good morning. Where's your guardian? I go, that guy. She said, the guy on the ladder? I said, yeah. She goes, no. Where's your guardian? Where's your parent, your cousin, uncle, someone? No, my dad had an audition today. Well, she said, you can't work. And I thought, what? She said, you got to get a hold of your father. I mean, you can't be here without a guardian. Long story short, at the time, my father, like I said, they were divorced. He was living on a sailboat in Marina del Rey. And the only way you could have a phone on the boat at that time was there was literally a cord plugged into the side of the boat, which fed a jack like in your house. Anyway, people tried to call him and call him and call him. They called his agent. They called everyone. They couldn't get a hold of him.
The guy that's obsessed with his phone couldn't get
a hold of him. The long and the short of it is that he had claimed that the boat had shifted in the slip and that the phone cord had come unplugged. And we heard that story at about 11 p.m. I had a 6 a.m. call time. I was supposed to have been done by 5. The company wrapped at 7 p.m. and the casting agent, who was a friend of my father's and mine and my mom's, came to pick me up. I had sat all day in the trailer, the school trailer. I could not go on set. They had to shoot around all my stuff and rebook it for another day. And I ended up back at my at the casting agent. I remember her name was Pam Polifroni. She was such a sweet lady. And I went back to her house, kind of scared, didn't know where my father was. My mother at the time was living in Las Vegas with her new husband. He picked me up at her house after she had gotten me pizza. We'd both fallen asleep on her couch, and he had claimed that was happening. So that was the beginning of sort of some sabotage that was going on that I didn't quite at the time process.
There's sabotage and abandonment. Not only abandonment, as his father, but like literal abandonment at the set, on the set.
My parents divorced when I was 12. I got my first agent, Harry Gold, when I was 14. So I'm sorry about that. I believe that's...
Oh, no worries. I just feel like it was like kind of, I think, expressing that, not necessarily competitiveness early on. He was almost kind of just like, I'm not really, it wasn't intentional to kind of sabotage your acting career. I think maybe part of it was he was just so self-absorbed.
It certainly was not premeditated. It was never my father's behavior, even my mom's behavior, both of them, yes, they're narcissists. Yes, they're entertainment people and they're unique and fun and bubbly and charming and wonderful. They don't have larceny in their heart. They're not, no malice. This is just a byproduct of who they are. It manifests itself in ways that can be very hurtful, very challenging. But it's not like, they sit at home going, I'm going to fuck him. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to,
No. I mean, I think that's a lot of with narcissism. It's not like, I'm going to ruin somebody's life today. But, it does have, and like you said before, I think that it's very common to look back on things and start to piece it together of, that's why they did this. That doesn't make it any less hurtful, though.
When people hurt without intending to hurt, the victim often says, well, they didn't mean that. And so you keep getting them off the hook. You keep giving them the benefit of the doubt. You keep giving them get a jail free card. And then after a while, you're standing there just empty and raw. And they're like, what happened?
Well, I mean, obviously, you kind of mentioned that around the time that you end up getting an agent, you felt that there was a little bit of a separation with you and your dad as far as he started seeing it competitively, and you obviously were trying to do your best, keep going with what you wanted to do. Kind of as a follow up to that, your father wrote a memoir about his life at one point called "Keep Interesting." No, what
yeah.
is the
Stay? I think it's Stay Interesting.
Yeah. Stay Interesting. There you go. And he makes some pretty lofty claims in that whole book. I mean, just a couple of things that John Wayne shot him in the head 7 times. He once told Dustin Hoffman, as you referred to, that he wouldn't make it as an actor, that he saved a man's life by climbing Mount Whitney. But we kind of want to know what your thoughts on the memoir were. And do you feel like it was an accurate depiction of his life?
Yeah. So in order to answer that question, I apologize. And I don't want to ramble, but I kind of have to go back a little bit. That memoir happened on the tail end of the success he'd had as the world's most interesting man for the Dos Equis stuff. But it's really important before we even get there, because, this rivalry between he and I really came to a head when I got nominated for an Emmy. In his mind, he had been working for 30 years, striving and beating the pavement and making the phone calls and doing the auditions and countless rejections and all of that stuff, the highs, the lows, all of it. And here I was, this snot-nosed kid in his mind, right out of the gate on a TV show. I get the pilot he never got. I get a series he never got. And now I got an Emmy nomination.
You would think you're his child. You would think that he would be excited for you.
You would.
You're almost a representation of his parenting.
Children are kind of an extension of you when they're young and they're agreeable and they do what they want you to do. But then once they they become competition, or you're not getting the same attention, then now they're not an extension of you anymore. They're a problem because they're not seen as a part of you anymore.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, I believe both my parents love their kids when their kids are making them look good. Mm-hmm. But whenever there's a challenge, whenever there's something that can be seen as not edifying them or not bolstering their ego, it becomes a threat. It's a really strange thing. And it's very related to entertainment and the arts because, when you work on camera or on print or you're in front of people, everything matters. Every nose hair, every eyebrow hair, everything about you scrutinize. And so, it's a really it's a very vulnerable place to be when you have a kid out there, maybe even outdoing you. I totally get it. I get where it comes from, but I don't get how one isn't mature enough to squelch that and go, but that's my kid. Like I can understand feeling it. I totally do. You wanted to be a baseball player your whole life and you never made it and your kid does. Of course you're proud of them. And of course you're heartbroken because they did and you didn't. I get that that's okay to have those feelings. It's normal. What's not normal is to take it out on the kid. Mm-hmm. I think that is, in all fairness, my father has never taken anything out on me intentionally. But our relationship is horrific. And it's the result of this. And it's amazing because I realized it. I have been in and out of therapy my whole life. It was something I grew up with because my parents have been in therapy. It was always the thing to do, group therapy and this. And it was a Hollywood thing. Agents would prescribe therapy and therapeutic groups to their actors who were all suffering from whatever. And then it was a very great networking opportunity. Scientology started that way in a weird way too. Hurt people coming together can do great things. And that was an interesting, I'm not a Scientologist, but I'm just saying those are the kinds of things that were prescribed in the 60s and 70s and 80s for a lot of performers was, why don't you all get together and talk about it and get your shit together. So anyway, my point is that it wasn't therapy I think therapy gave me the tools to be cognizant, but it was a discussion with my 13-year-old son that had me fully realize and remember the truth as to why my father and I are at odds and have been since long as I can remember. And that happened in a story that I'm happy to share. But I want to answer your question about the book. My father and I have had a really tough time connecting, and I really do believe it is because of what we just discussed. And he's been in and out of my life my whole life, not because he's taken off or whatever. I generally retreat and go sort of find my sanity and center myself, because being in a relationship with my father is not an easy ride for anybody. It's really, he's a unique person who he himself, I've come to realize, is a victim of a lot of abuse, real abuse as a kid. And I didn't know that until sort of recently.
I mean, that's just interesting because, in his memoir, he's very much like complimentary of his father and how great his father was. And
yeah.
was that did the abuse come from there?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. And that's just one of the, you asked what's missing. I mean, how do I feel about the book? And one of the things that's missing is that when he was a child, his mother was a socialite and a model in New York in the 20s and 30s. And she was absolutely beautiful and absolutely popular and literally should never have had a child. And she was not the greatest mom. I mean, there are stories I've heard where he'd be locked naked in the closet for a few days without food or water, things like that.
Wow.
Horrific stuff. I do not know all the details. He's never really, but I've heard it. She's a narcissist on a level that's even, grandma, she would say, "Oh, darling, what would you like? I'd come to my house. I'll make you whatever you want for dinner. I'll do whatever you want. You tell me what you want." I love prime rib, the best prime rib. You get there, she makes salmon. It was like this. It was eccentric, but it was all bullshit. She just say whatever she wanted to say and do whatever she wanted to do. And he grew up with that. So we've ebb and flowed, my father and I, for years and years and years. And one of the things that had happened was my daughter was born. My ex-wife had a run-in with my father that was uncomfortable, in which my father had had a couple too many martinis and became even a little flirtatious, as uncomfortable as it might sound. I don't think he would have followed through with anything like that, but he is a charming guy, and he's handsome, and he grew up with a lot of attention. And my ex-wife was there. I was on location working on a movie, and he had come by to do some laundry because he was basically living at the back of his truck on auditions for a week because he had lived up north in Northern California and was stopped by and was just uncomfortable. She called me, she's like, "Your dad had a bunch of martinis." He's like, "I don't know, flirty. I don't know. I don't feel comfortable here alone with him." And I'm like, "What?" So I confronted him. He said, "What are you talking about? I did a load of laundry." I remember what I don't really remember the full story other than my ex-wife was very uncomfortable. And when my daughter was born, there had been so many ups and downs between he and I. My ex-wife was like, "I really don't want him in the hospital. I don't want him here. It's too much." And I respected that. And so he wasn't around for the birth of his first grandchild. And because of that, it kind of caused a rift for about 10 years where he was completely out of my life. And that was when he landed the role as the Dos Equis guy. And the irony is when you're not talking to a parent, it's tough. You're always reminded, every commercial, "Mom, Dad," whatever. But what's even more insane is every billboard in town has a picture of your dad on it.
Yeah.
And every time you turn on the TV, you see him. And you're seeing success that he had dreamt of your whole life. You knew all he ever wanted was literally what is happening for him. You see it happening. And again, it's like that weird thing where you're jealous, but inwardly and outwardly, you're kind. In my case, I totally related. Like, I was jealous. Like, wow, he fucking landed a huge deal here. But I was happy for him. I didn't have that weird, how dare he? I was like, oh, he finally got it. But I didn't want him to know that. I didn't want him to know I was proud of him because fuck him. He didn't make me feel proud. So the memoir comes out. We had sort of reconciled our relationship a bit. The memoir comes out. I'm not in it. There's no fucking mention of me.
Did he mention his other children?
I believe he did.
How many siblings do you have?
So that's, I mean, this is going to be the longest podcast in the history.
No, you're doing.
No, it's not.
Okay,
no.
All right, yeah, you guys have an editor, so that's all. Okay, so the point is, when he was married to my mother, I guess my father just couldn't keep in his pants. And I guess he didn't understand that there were condoms. So after they divorced, my father remarried to a wonderful lady, Margot, who was my stepmom and just a great woman and put up with a lot of bullshit. I'll never forget, my father called me and goes, "Son, I have someone I want you to meet. You have a sister." Excuse me? Ooh. Turns out he had an affair with an actress who I have to keep nameless during the time he was married. And she had a child. And that was my new sister, who I got to meet. And of course, my father, being the dramatic actor, "Oh, isn't she gorgeous? It's my daughter," this bullshit. Mm-hmm. And it was all about her for about a year. And then she started to realize, oh, he's officially full of shit, isn't he? Yeah, he's officially full of shit. I never really got along with her. She lived in Palmdale, which is way outside of LA. It's sort of the suburbs of the suburbs. She grew up with a Catholic mother and went to the church and everything I never did. My newly met sister and I didn't have anything in common, and we didn't have really a relationship of any kind. And because of that, we drifted apart really quickly. And, she was a very different person, different background, different life. We weren't raised by any of the same standards. So it's just very hard to relate to, certainly as a sibling. But wait, there's more, as they say. My father introduced me to yet another daughter, this time from a Delta Airlines stewardess, again happening during the time he was married to my mom. And this particular young lady was really interesting because she was an evangelical, whatever Christian.
Evangelical, yeah.
That's the one. And she played guitar and would sing these songs about Jesus in heaven. And that lasted about a week for me. Apparently, he has grandchildren from these two daughters that he's still very much in contact with. I know nothing about it, and I'm very happy to know nothing about it.
Wait a minute. He's in contact with those grandchildren?
Yes.
He's not really in contact with your children.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this book comes out. And some real sloppy elements of his memoir are missing. So for me, I put the book down. I've never finished it. I wasn't so much offended that I wasn't in it. I was offended that he isn't capable as an adult man after everything he's been through, everything he's seen so many go through, that he is incapable of being truly vulnerable and writing a fucking memoir.
Yeah.
I understand you might leave out to protect, or some things are just too traumatic or whatever, but it's a bunch of horseshit as far as I'm concerned. I'm not saying the stuff that's in the book isn't true. It is, from what I saw, it's largely true. And it's largely very complimentary to him, which is why the book didn't do well. I think the audience that read that book realized, oh, me.
That was kind of what I got a feel from doing some kind of background research on it, was that the press junket that he kind of did to promote the book was a lot about how he actually kind of is the most interesting man in real life. And as cool as that might be, it's not, I think it's kind of a hard thing for a lot of people to relate to.
Right. And it speaks volumes, right?
Yes. Right. Yeah.
I mean, you don't write a memoir to self-promote. You write a memoir to be cathartic and to share. People have interest in me and I just want to help others. That's really what it's supposed to be.
Yeah. It sounds definitely like there was a lot of him continuing the cycle from his childhood. And I'm sure that the abuse or whatever kind of neglect that you've learned about has informed you a little bit as to what made him who he is. But it is I can imagine it being very frustrating.
It is. Hurtful. I mean, I was trying to think like the trauma just keeps going because now he's hurting your children by not being in their lives. So he won't, it's like he doesn't stop. He doesn't realize that his inaction in your life and in their life is causing more pain down the road.
Yes. And it's a cycle. And also that disconnect is carried with us. I have it. I'm not going to lie. I'm a very disconnected person emotionally when it comes to things because I learned how to be that way to save myself. Mm-hmm. And so that transfers through my life. I have colleagues and friends. Oh my God, my aunt died. And I go, okay. Because I know how to. It's very hard for me to be emotionally vulnerable because every time I ever was, I got trampled on. And again, it was never intentional, to my father's credit and to my mom's, but specifically as we're talking about him. And he is interesting. He's an amazing person. That's what I wanted to say. He's an amazing guy. If you were to meet him, you'd walk away from that meeting like, wow, that guy's awesome. He's funny and charming and wonderful and intelligent and well-read and experienced and interesting. He's all of those things, as, by the way, is pretty much everybody. But his is unique. He's some brushes with greatness. He went to Camp David. He spent time with Obama. He's an amazing person. He lives in Vermont now. He's worked with Bernie Sanders. He's very politically active. He's a wonderful, good, kind-hearted person at the end of the day. He's a fucking horrible father. And he is a miserable husband. And it is because he is fucking miserable. That is it. I mean, at my age, I'm 51. So this could be my last Zoom ever. And
Stop.
getting long in the tooth. I hit a
clearly
fucking
the
wall.
humor. I can already tell that the humor was a really good coping skill for you as far as deflecting and.
If you don't laugh, you cry, baby.
I know, and that's basically the basis of our show.
Yeah, it is. It is. So the book came out and fuck that book because it's nothing. It does not represent who that man is because it only reps the side of the man that he wants to share. And who the fuck wants to know that? We can
Yeah.
see that anywhere. That's nothing. I mean, let's find out. Do you when you wipe, do you fold or crumple? We want to know this shit. We want to know about people.
At the end of the day, do you think that your father understands the kind of pain he has put his child through? His child
Sorry,
meaning you.
I don't know if you heard that, but the parent police are outside.
Apparently.
Childhood trauma police.
No, I'm just asking, do you think that he is aware or he understands how much he hurt you, how much he screwed this up, how much he got in his own way as being a great dad?
So to answer your question, I have to tell a story. I'm sorry. So sorry.
You're fine.
Or do you want me to say, yeah, and then we move on?
I want you
No,
to.
I wouldn't.
No,
I really
please.
can't stand that. Please elaborate.
Okay. He knows not what he does. And I'll give you the best possible example of that. When he and I reconciled, I had remarried. I have an amazing wife, Kateria. She's from Thailand. I paid extra for her.
Stop.
No, I'm kidding. She is not mail order. She is the most special person that's ever come into my life and has opened up and broadened my lens on the world in a way that I could go on. That's a whole other podcast. She's a talented, amazing, kind-hearted Buddhist and an amazing chef. And we just opened up a restaurant together. And she's an amazing addition to our life. And I say she's an amazing stepmom. She's an amazing person. But I reconciled with my father during the time that she came back into my life. So about 7 years ago, he was still in every billboard in town. And his grandkids had never met him. And he had a 13-year-old granddaughter and, a 9-year-old grandson or 7-year-old grandson. And they wanted to meet their granddad because he's famous. He called me and we started chatting. And he said, well, I'm going to be in town next month. We're doing another round of commercials and I'd love to see you guys. And it felt amazing. Oh my God, this is great. And about a month and a half went by and he called me and says, I'm in town. Are you guys, yeah. And we had lunch and there was hugs, there was tears. We hadn't talked. He met his grandkids. It was a big deal. And I remember my takeaway from that was, well, that's awesome. Then a few months later, hey, I'm going to be back in town for another commercial. I'd love to see you. This went on for a couple of months. He's living in Vermont, as mentioned. But then the commercial stopped. They didn't renew his contract. There's a whole story about that. It's not important. And then I didn't see him. And at the time I was running 2 businesses and I had 2 kids and I had just remarried and I'm not getting on a plane anytime soon to go back east to visit. I couldn't. I just had too many responsibilities and, living paycheck to paycheck. And he's a multimillionaire living in a mansion that he built by hand in Vermont. And I'm thinking to myself, how about it's my birthday coming up? You want to? Oh, well, turns out the beginning of the end for me, and this is sort of in line with the questions that you have, Todd, is I quickly realized the only time I ever saw the guy was when he had something to do in LA. He would include me for a few hours on one of the days he was here. And he still does that. There has never once been, I'm getting on a plane and I'm going to see my child.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, Todd, he knows not what he does. If I said to him, you're a schmuck, he'll say, are you kidding me? Every time I'm in LA, I spend time with you.
Yeah.
In his mind, he's doing the right thing. In my mind, if my child lived in Guam or Borneo and he said, I miss you, Dad, I'm on a fucking plane.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But that's not him. That's not his style. That's not his thing. So he, in his mind, thinks, I do. I try. I do. I give. In my mind, it's your terms suck and they don't feel good. And most recently, Christmas came late. We got some Christmas cards. Fine. There's a chip on his shoulder because I had a conversation with him when we reconciled about 5 years ago, 6 years ago. I was finishing up a messy divorce. I had already been, when I say messy, I was divorced, but I had been remarried because I can't be alone, apparently. And there's a long story there. Yeah. I was just, all these things. I'm trying to buy a house and all this stuff was going down. And I reached out to my multi-millionaire, super successful father and asked for some advice and had hoped maybe he'd say, hey, you need a couple of bucks. I can help you. It's something. And I got bent out of shape. I was like, he doesn't owe me anything at all. I don't expect anything at all. But not only did he deflect every attempt that I made at looking for just advice, he wanted no part of being involved in any decision-making in my life of any kind. I didn't call to borrow money. I called to see what resources I had with my dad. He knows how to swing a hammer. Could he help me fix this new house? Is there,
Mm-hmm.
anything. And I wrote him a letter and I said to him, you won the lottery. You won the lottery. You not only got all your dreams come true as an actor and an artist, you became a multimillionaire because of it. You won the fucking lottery. And that's wonderful. But then you think to yourself, what would I do if I won the lottery? To me, I don't judge what people do or don't do when they win the lottery. I just know what I would do if I won the lottery. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, so my dad wins the lottery. He's been a shitty parent his entire fucking life. He just chooses to not redeem himself. Or when he does, he tries to redeem himself on a level that's only good for him.
Yeah.
And here is his son. He just got through a shitty divorce. He's struggling. He just made a big career change. I'm working. I'm trying to buy a house. I'm completely fucked. Not only does he not want to offer advice, he's not offering anything at all. And my takeaway was, I told him, I said, you won the fucking lottery and no one would know it, including yourself. You're the stingiest human being. You don't share anything. You're incapable of sharing. He took it as all about the money. But to me, it's like, how easy is it to share when you don't have to worry about money?
Yeah.
Even just your time.
Mm-hmm.
That's what was really painful for me, because it wasn't that he owes me anything, but what he could do if he really gave a shit and wanted to share with me, like, hey, kid, I care about you. You know what? When you get that house, I'll come stay with you and help you redo the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
You won the lottery. It's not like you need to go get a fucking job or you can't afford a plane ticket.
But do you think maybe part of it is that he's like worried that, it's in that kind of disordered thinking, that he's worried that, when you do call for something, that's what you want, is that you want a piece of the
sure.
pie.
He's that way, period.
Yeah.
My point is, in answering Todd's question from like 3 hours ago, sorry to ramble, he just doesn't, in his mind, taking the call and listening to me was all he needed to do. And he's given. Wait, I gave you 20 minutes on the phone. What do you want from me?
Mm-hmm.
So he just is not, he doesn't get it. And again, it's not an excuse. He's not out of jail free with me, because he's also basically not in my life. Like I said, Christmas came along, barely heard from him. Recently, I turned 51. Right before that, my daughter turned 18. Huge birthday. And directly after that, my son turned 13. 3 big birthdays, all missed. Nothing.
Yeah.
I had to tell him, your granddaughter just turned 18. And then even more recently than that, a few weeks ago, my daughter graduated high school. Nothing. 0.
Well, I mean, obviously all of that is incredibly hurtful and something that clearly has stuck with you. And I would call it, would you consider it traumatizing?
100%. And I don't want to make this a bitch fest about him. The reality is, when it comes to the entertainment business, let's go back to sort of the crux of all this. When it comes back to the entertainment business, the price that's paid for folks to get entertained is pretty tremendous. There's an environmental impact, there's a financial impact, there's a spiritual and emotional impact that is never accounted for. And I'll give you an example that will maybe drive some of that home. I've worked, you mentioned director's assist. So what I used to do is actually called video assist. And video assist is I used to set up all the monitors on a film set. And so all the camera feeds would come to me and I would distribute them so that the filmmakers could see what the heck was going on. And I did this for 30 years of my life. I've done countless movies. I've had incredible experiences. I'm very proud of it. And we can go on forever about it. In that process, I missed kids' first steps. I wasn't there for my wife's birthday. I missed my experiences that I should have had and rites of passage that should have taken place. Because to make movies, the entire company must sacrifice. Their life becomes the movie. And so there's an impact to all this. My father, my mother, same thing. Yeah, they had a kid, but their career came first. This wasn't a doctor or a lawyer who did a 12-hour day and came home. These are people like myself who spent 30 years working in film and doing 20-hour days and not having enough energy to do laundry and not having enough energy to give a hug and wanted to be left alone when they weren't working. And so there's just a huge impact on the entertainment business. It is a mental health problem because, yes, it's great to be a star, but you hear these rumors, like a great example. To remain nameless, there's many famous actors who you hear, oh, you're not supposed to make eye contact or, this sort of thing. these people are protecting themselves because it's an abusive world that we live in entertainment, not just from the performers too, producers, directors, writers, costume people. People have reputations and they do things, and it's just really taxing. And your safe place is supposed to be your friends and family. And unfortunately, I just never really had that on the family side. My safe place was never at home. And then when I later on became working as a crew member, an actor, writer, director, producer, video assist, all the stuff I've done, you just see it more clearly, and you recognize that efforts need to be made in order to protect yourself and the people that you love from it, because it's a monster.
100%. Goldie, I want to shift gears here for just a second. We're aware, we want to congratulate you that you've basically lost almost 60 pounds recently, which is
That's correct.
A huge feat. How have you dealt with body image in the industry growing up as an actor? Was there pressure to be a certain size, or because you were a character kid, did they want you to stay heavy, or did they want you to get skinny? Did you have any pressure from your family, from directors, from agents, from managers? I mean, and this was back in this would have been the 70s, 80s, and 90s, right? So
yeah, here comes the story. I get this job. I'm 14 years old, and I get this job to be on Morning Star, Evening Star. And I get this job because I'm doing comedy improv, and I'm doing a showcase, and we weren't at the Laugh Factory yet, but I'd gotten some attention, and I got the job. At the time at 14, I'm sure you guys remember, everything changes with a person. The voice changes, skin changes. I got pudgy, a little pudgy. So when I say a little pudgy, my default setting was 160 pounds. Maybe I was 175 pounds. I got a little heavy. My voice changed. They wanted me to be the fat, funny kid on this TV show. Let's let me no qualms. That's what they wanted. And basically, my agent and my parents agreed to signing off on a rapid weight gain program sponsored by CBS. These were days when we didn't know that this was inappropriate. And in 4 months, I gained 60 pounds. And I began the first 3 episodes in a fat suit underneath my wardrobe to be the fat, funny kid. Yep, 100%. You know what? Who gives a shit? At 14, you're like, oh my God, I'm on TV. And, another donut. Let me
and I get to eat whatever I want. Yeah.
All day, encouraged all day. No, we got taquitos. Oh, it's great. So I was in heaven. And then the show got canceled, and I was 60 pounds overweight. I wasn't supposed to be 60 pounds overweight. And everything was great. And I can't continue my career. And I worked, and I played music in a band. I'm call myself a drummer, but I'm not. And I had fun, and I opened up a coffee bar. I had all this great stuff in my life, and everything was good. And I'll remember I was about 24 years old, and I was in this band. And the lead singer came up to me, and he says, we should have a band meeting. We have a band meeting, and we're getting some attention here. We might get a record deal. Image is everything. And I think we should all start working out. And I thought, you just directed at me, and he goes, well, you put on some weight. And I hadn't noticed it. But around 24, 25, I just started gaining weight for no reason. It wasn't like I went from eating alfalfa sprouts and juice to pizza. Nothing changed. I just started putting on weight. And I have wrestled with my weight since that age, up and down. I'm not a diet person, whatever. It just never worked for me.
I feel you on that.
It's a fucking nightmare. And, I just wish it was Renaissance, because then I must fucking model.
I know. I've said that so many times. It's so genetics, I just think it kicks in your 20s.
Turns out I destroyed my metabolism when I was a kid by that rapid weight gain and loss. And to this day, I struggle with it. I have my whole life. Like I say, what's worked for me is, it doesn't matter. It's not a weight loss show, but I'm essentially fasting, and I really avoid sugar and stuff like that. But it has been devastating for me, because I grew up worried about every hair on my head. I'm not a vanity person, but I'm cognizant that people judge people for the way they look, certainly in our industry. To answer your question, Todd, it is fucking brutal. It's absolutely brutal. And I am friends with actors that you would think it's not an issue, and you come to find out that they're tortured by it, and it's really terrible. One of the things that has been suggested to me repeatedly is, you got to exercise, you got to exercise, you got to exercise. Goes back to my dad, and I'm just bringing it up because this is what real trauma looks like. This is maybe the hardest thing for me to talk about, because it's something that just completely infiltrates my life. When I was a young boy and I wanted to go do something with my dad, like I think most kids would want to do, it always came up that he had to go for a run, or that he was going to go to the gym, because vanity for my father as an actor was everything. He had to have the physique. He had to look good or he wasn't going to get the job. And it consumed him. And it was his priority. It was his priority over me. It was his priority over my mom. It was always about weight loss and working out and looking good and lying in the sun and being tan and taking care of himself. A lot now, the term word is self-care. This wasn't self-care. This wasn't self-care. This was pure vanity.
And obsession.
And obsession. And what was happening is that he would want me to go for a run. What 12-year-old wants to go for a run with their dad who can outpace them?
Yes,
and while he's
left behind.
Yeah, and then while he's outpacing, you say, "What's fucking wrong with you? Can't you keep up?" Like that. It's like, whoa. So exercise was the most exercise and fitness specifically was the most disruptive element of my childhood. It caused my parents to divorce in a lot of ways because he would choose the gym over my mother. It was a thing. And, when you have someone in your life who hurts you, you often find yourself not wanting to be like that person, consciously and subconsciously. And the irony is my whole life struggling with weight. Now I've come to find out I fucked up my metabolism and then pituitary scenario and testosterone, like all these scientific things. But I also come to find out and realize that every time you hear someone, man, I went for a run this morning and then I ran 32 laps and then I went on the fucking treadmill and I steam bath and I feel like $1,000,000. I hate doing it. God, I feel good after I do. Now for me, I hate doing it. And then after I do it, I feel like I'm just like him. And I don't want to be like him. And I've not been able to break that cycle. Just the word exercise, I associate with being like him. And I've worked so hard. My kid stubs their toe, I'm right there. I'm not a helicopter, I'm there. My kid graduates, I'm there. If you want to talk to me, I'm available. I'm here. I'm a father first. I'm everything else second. And that's just it. I need to break the cycle. And part of breaking the cycle is I don't want to be like him. So it's horrible for me. I mean, I've talked about this countless hours with experts. Like, how do I feel good after riding a stationary bike rather than hating myself? Now I'm like my abuser.
Yeah.
You just don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So,
no, then that's it's very deep seated. It's not something you can just kind of like, well, you just got to just put the clothes on, put your exercise clothes out and you'll just, want to do it like that. There's a whole mental,
right. Yeah. Like I had a therapist once say to me, well, if you were abused by someone who hit you, the way you heal from that and later in life and to not repeat is to just don't hit your kids.
Mm-hmm.
So when your abuse is something that's actually good for you, it's really hard to take the approach. Well, you just don't do that when you get older. You don't, you break the cycle. Well, I've broken the cycle and now I'm a fat fuck. So, it's a double-edged sword.
Except for not now, because you have lost almost 60 pounds and you found your own way of kind of around it, I think, of dealing with it.
My life is about me and my kids and my work. And I don't hold a grudge. I wish the very best for my family and my father and for everybody. One of the great things about being married to a Thai Buddhist is you come to realize that it's, no ego, no problem. Honestly, no ego, no problem is about the greatest advice I ever got, because I can internalize, I can question, I can wonder, I can try to figure out, and it's just a waste of my time. It is what it is, and I accept what it is. I certainly wished and hoped and prayed many, many days and nights that things would be different, but that gets me nowhere too. I take it by the reins and do my thing, and I do what I think's best for me and for my family. And I have to say, it's not perfect, but I'm really proud of not, being in a gutter somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, I think we should all commend you for not being in a gutter, but you don't seem like the kind of person that would end up there. So, you mentioned that you're kind of breaking the cycle and you have your own kids, you have a different kind of mindset. Eden, your daughter, just graduated from high school, correct?
She did.
Okay. Congrats to her. And you have a son, Jacob, who's 13.
Yes.
Do you feel like, now that you mentioned that you don't want to be anything like what you experienced, but how have you been able to kind of make that adjustment? And do you think that being a parent in this industry has its own unique challenges that you kind of have to fight as well?
Absolutely. So I don't make a conscious decision every day to be different or break a chain. And I want to make that super clear. One of the things that I did was work on myself to understand what is right and what is wrong. Sometimes your parents teach you that when you're a kid by telling you or showing you. And in my case, doing something else, which is really confusing as a kid. But that's the result of growing up with performers who are dramatic and over the top and narcissistic and all of those things. It took me a long time to kind of figure out what the barometer is. I created my own barometer for myself. What is right? What is wrong? Not just for me, but what is truly right? What is truly wrong? And I think I'm pretty comfortable with that at this point. And I use that to guide me. I really do use my gut. I feel like I have a good gut instinct. Raising an 18-year-old girl or raising a daughter to become 18 has been a challenge for sure. But my approach always was say yes as often as possible to everything you possibly can, so that when you say no, it holds water. That's a big thing, because a lot of parents say, no, put that down,
Yeah.
no. And no becomes nothing. It just becomes a word. So I try to say yes as much as I possibly can, because unless it's like a razor blade flamethrower juggling thing, I pretty much am okay with them having a couple bumps and bruises in life, emotionally and physically. So I'm very protective in the most subtle way I can possibly be. And I really feel that part of protecting my kids is allowing them to be individuals, because if you don't, they're not going to be prepared for Earth. I will let them go hatchet throwing, and we're very big into sailing and boating, which is a gift from my father. Actually, he exposed it to me as a young age, and I carry. I take with me the good as much as I possibly can, and try to toss out the bad. But the kids, they hop in the boat. We've swam with whales. We have a little skiff that my son drives around. I just let him go and do what he wants to do, and I trust them, and I let them make little mistakes along the way. And I think they're interesting people. And the most important thing for me is that they don't appear to be fearful like some other younger people are. I hope it's the result of me exposing them to as much as possible. But yeah, they're both born and raised in LA. They've been around the film industry their entire life. Daddy's been gone a lot, but they've visited me a lot as well, and they've seen me working. And
are they interested in working in the biz at all, or?
At this point, my daughter is going into college as an artist, which I celebrate, and I think it's great. She's going to be around her people, which is huge, and that's what's most important. I don't know what that could turn into. She's got her eyes on makeup and wardrobe and set design and stuff. She's very interested in it, but I don't know that that's where she'll end up. And my son Jacob is a video gamer like every other 13-year-old who's discovered, I believe maybe he's discovered some dirty pictures on the internet, which is a whole weird thing to navigate. At 13, I had a National Geographic I would not let go of. But he now has an iPhone, so who knows what he's up to. But I try to guide him through that circus the best I can. I mean, raising kids in a time when marijuana is legal, when the internet has everything in your hands, palm of your hands, that's hard to navigate. But, the most important thing is reality. And I really try to put them in a scenario every day I possibly can of what this is reality, guys. This is it. Right. And hopefully it leads to the right things.
Well, knowing you personally, and I know your children, you are a very, very good father, and you're very present in their lives, and you're setting a very good example for them. But I want to know, if you didn't grow up in this industry, what do you think you would be doing now? Do you feel that it was expected from your parents? What would you be doing if you didn't have anything to do with the film industry?
I've done it. That's the great thing. So when I turned 16, I had like $100,000 sitting in a Jackie Coogan account. So when you're a young working actor, Jackie Coogan played Spanky on The Little Rascals way back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
And his parents took all his money, everything. So the Screen Actors Guild and whatever governing bodies there are out there decided that if you're under 18 and you work as an actor, your parents can take a percentage, right, to help cover costs and be your guardian and get you to and from work and whatever. But the bulk, like 80, 85, 90%, I can't remember what it is, goes into what's called a Jackie Coogan account, is what they call it. I don't know if that's real, but that's what I recall. So you can't touch it till you're 18. And it's to protect the kids that are working as actors. And, mom and dad can't squander their kids' money. So you can also, at 16, become emancipated from your family. And that makes you basically an 18-year-old as far as legally. And I did that. I did it really so that I can continue working as an actor without having the restrictions of being a minor. But the byproduct of that was that this 100 grand or so got released to me. And after buying a boat, taking everyone out to dinner a lot, what was left I used along with an investment my dad gave me, which was great. And I opened up a restaurant in New York. And so really interested in that, really interested in that, the social side of it. I love food. I went to the Culinary Institute and took a managerial course and took all kinds of stuff and wanted to really be a restaurateur. I thought it was super hip. And of course,
I didn't know we had this in common.
You two
here.
have that in common. You're both owners of restaurants.
Yeah, it's like a hospitality kind of thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
I like the energy of it. I always looked at a great restaurant as being an extension of a family, and I don't know, something about it was very cool. I was drawn to it. But the crazy thing is that that's not where it ended for me. I had live music 2 nights a week and an open mic night, and then that led to me meeting a really talented singer-songwriter. And then we would go back to my house and smoke a bunch of weed and play music, and that turned into me being a drummer in his band. And then we got a record contract, and then we opened up for a couple of acts on the East Coast, and that turned into a U.S. tour, and then I sold the restaurant and I toured with a band. And to answer your question, Todd, I have done a lot other than the film industry and entertainment. Yes, music is part of it, but I've owned restaurants. I have invested in real estate. I have a number of things. I tried to open up a business in maritime business where I was going to do food service on a boat for fishermen. Like I've tried a bunch of stuff. To answer your question, the most intoxicating elements of my life professionally, personally is another story, professionally have all come from access to or come from entertainment. I'm not smart enough to cure cancer. There's just no way. But I am funny enough to have someone suffering from cancer have a smile, which I think is really important.
Yeah.
So I go with that. I feel like I have something to give, not just my colleagues or the industry, but I feel like my sensibilities, my cognizance of human beings and how they think and what they need, what they want, what matters, how scared we all are at the end of the day, is impacted by some of the work that I'm involved in doing. And it means a lot to me.
That's amazing. I mean, I think just to kind of bring it a little full circle, it seems almost like with your ability to be open and to be vulnerable, but also all this experience that you've been through, it's almost like you are the most interesting man in the world. And I think I just think that you've taken, just part of my French, taken a shitty situation or upbringing, not that it was, like you said, you didn't feel it was necessarily at the time or even now, like excessively abusive, but it was not ideal by any means. And really taken that and ran with it in a positive way. And I just commend you so much for doing that. And I know that the funny man stuff is awesome. And everybody, we're going to get to that very shortly. But, I think that it's incredible kind of how much you've been through and how much you've done in the wake of that.
Thanks.
So,
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. But we do, we know that you do actually have plans, and there may actually be a chopper waiting somewhere.
I thank you guys for having me. And Todd, I have a great relationship with Todd outside of these podcasts because Todd and I have collaborated together creatively, and he's an incredibly talented person, and I really trust his instinct. And I think this podcast is super cool. And it's important, those folks out there in the universe that suffer, and it's pretty much everybody, whether folks want to admit it or not. It's nice to be able to hear you're not alone. But I'm about to just say one last thing before and you can go ahead and fire up that chopper there. Okay, great. Planet Earth is a rock in space, floating through space. We know very little about it, but we do know about this rock that we're on. And we're all in this together, folks. And I think it's time we just recognize that we're all on the only spaceship that we know of that can sustain us. And we got to start getting along a little bit. And I think that would be great if we could put all the borders and discussions and the division and bullshit aside and just take a moment and realize this is all we got. So hopefully we get that together. And with that said, the one thing I just wanted to say to your listeners and to you guys is the best advice I ever got in my life. I'm a very talented actor. Doesn't matter. Remain nameless. I was trying to do something funny. I was trying to do a funny scene in improv, and I couldn't get there. And I kept trying to be funny. I kept trying to be good. I kept trying to come up with the line that I needed to say. And I think people do this in life, whether it's on stage or, you're at work and you're trying to do a good job. You're trying to be good at marriage. You're trying to be a good parent. You're trying to be a good friend. Whatever it is we try to do, And this advice came to me, and I'm just going to say it, and maybe it doesn't mean much when it comes out of my fat mouth, but it might mean something in an hour or so when you're sitting at home having a cup of coffee, or, just taking a second for yourself. And I just want to share it with everyone. And that is that all of us, every single one of us on this spaceship that's hurtling through space, we have access to all of the answers, but we have to step aside and let them in.
Yeah, no, that's very powerful, because we are kind of our own obstacles in life.
We sure are. We sure are. And we're really good at putting more of them in front of us.
Very true.
Agreed.
Very true. Well,
cool.
I'm just pumped that this happened. And Todd, you should take it away from here. I don't want to ruin it while we're ending on a high note.
No, it's really great. Goldie, thank you so much for being on the program. And thank you for sharing your trauma with us and how you've overcome it. And I think, knowing you and knowing your beautiful wife, Kat, she's been such a great influence in your life and in your children's lives. You're celebrated here, and we appreciate you.
Thank you guys so much for having me, and love to see you when you're in town. Come by our restaurant. We'd love to see you.
I would love to come to your restaurant. I can't wait. Just put me on the list, though.
Anytime.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you. And listeners, thanks for tuning in.
What'd you think?
I mean, it's hard to put into words, because I thought it was just so amazing how much he bared his soul. But at the same time, it wasn't like a woe is me. It wasn't like, oh, I went through all this and this is why everything's so terrible. It was like a very almost objective look at what he had been through. And you can tell that he's worked through a lot of things.
Yeah. And he's a big proponent of therapy. And Goldie he's one of those people that I look to sometimes weekly for advice or his interpretation of a situation or whatever. But I think it's because he has been in so many situations and has been through so much heartache. It's almost that he puts himself in that, and not that he's numb to it, but it's like he can separate it, and objectively look at it and say, this is what it was, and this is what it is, and this is why I am the way I am. This is why.
But, it's funny. It's kind of some of the things he wouldn't point out himself, really. It's like I can kind of tell that, like, his self-deprecating comments and the humor aspect, and then add in there how many things he's actually done. And he's not the first person to tell you that. You had to tell me all this stuff. I had to go search IMDb, do all these things to actually wrap up. And then he, at the end, really kind of summarized everything when you asked, what would you have done if you hadn't been in the industry? I mean, I think that was a moment that I really connected with him, not just because of the restaurant thing, but that he never put himself in a box. Like he always followed what he wanted to do and kept at it and went with the flow. It wasn't like he was trying to force a square into a round hole. It was like, he just seems like an old soul to me.
Totally. And he is a very funny man.
Yes.
He did stand up for years. He, obviously is rooted in improv. I think he should still be doing it. I would watch him on Saturday Night Live or any of those shows like tomorrow. He's so funny, but it does show you, a lot of comedians go through have been through dark times. And I was just so impressed with his bravery I don't think he's ever spoken publicly about his father. So that was
nothing that I could find about that. So, I mean,
that was pretty incredible. And if his father were to listen to this, I would hope that he would understand that Goldie, it's very clear he loves his father, but he wants his father to be his father.
Yeah.
And
and maybe in a way acknowledge the pain that has been caused, because, with a lot of people with personalities like that, that is the separation from everybody else, is living in kind of their own world, a bubble of internal, it's not just, oh, me, but on top of that is that they live in a different reality.
Right.
And so, I would also say that if his dad were to ever listen to this, that it'd be kind of a holding a mirror up kind of situation of, you might see it this way, but other people don't, especially your loved ones. So maybe it's worth taking a minute.
Right.
To think
at
about
the end of the day, you would hope that it would hit him at some point, like, this is my child. If he's already up there in age and has another life and other children and other grandchildren, and he's sort of involved in that's the life he chose. You're missing out on a really great human being.
Yeah.
Goldy has turned his heartache into kindness and acceptance for all humans. And I would hope one day that they would be able to have some sort of a reconciliation, or his father was some kind of aha moment.
Yeah. But I do respect the fact that I think Goldie's gotten to a point where he's accepted that that's not necessarily going to happen. I mean, that's the acceptance. I think that everybody else, and he's trying to kind of preach, is that, you're never going to get that. I mean, yes, there are certain situations you might get that, but in this scenario and in a lot of scenarios in life, I think that was kind of what he's trying to impart on all of us, is that it is what it is and life is what you make it. And I think that he could be way more messed up coming from two very narcissistic parents. So I think that, I agree with you. I think he's hysterical.
But here's the thing. I met his mother. His mother is so amazing and charming, and they do have a very, very strong relationship. And
I'm just taking his words.
No, I know you. I know you're not calling them narcissists. I'm literally just repeating. But I think Goldy, he says that to her face with a smile. I think he still has a very much an affection for his mother, and she's a class act. When I met her, very, very prim and proper, and but it would have been interesting to know her because she's 91. It would have been very interesting to know her, back in the day. But she's, you would never know she's 91. She's very sprightly.
Oh, wow. Well, that's always good. I think in general, like the thing from this whole interview that I feel like I want the listeners to know is that we could have probably talked for 5 hours about 100%. Everything going on in his life. And we tried to just kind of focus and keep it to the things that were kind of the most impactful to him. But even the way he speaks about his mother is very reverential. It's not like, he makes jokes about, she'll tell you that she had the same kind of day, but it's overall, he is a very layered person. And I wish, I hope we can have like a part 2 or something where we can just have him do jokes or just talk about all of his restaurant stuff. Like there's so many aspects to him. And I just hope everybody
working with Brad Pitt all the time and working
he's worked with saying, why are we not having Brad Pitt on this show? He has to have
Brad
trauma.
Can talk about his trauma.
He's got to have it. He's going to tell us.
For sure. I think today was a very intense, beautifully intense podcast. And thank you, Goldy, for being so forthcoming today.
Yes. Thank you so much. It was just, I think it gave us all a lot to think about, but I think it, was a very healing and wonderful thing that I hope a lot of people can relate to and also see kind of how they're not alone with all this. Doesn't matter how much fame and fortune you have. We are not alone. So I thank you, Goldy, so much for coming on. And as always, Todd, I love seeing you.
Love seeing you.
I can't wait to see you again next week.
See you next week.
All right. Bye.